Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 104. So just giving you an insight of what we got up ahead and just going to compare our analysis from last week as well. So we are going to start off with gold. So what we was looking at last week was this possibility of price pushing up higher just above this, and then we could have expected like a nice drop off. We used the uptrend here just to kind of pre-warn like any type of activity to the downside. As you can see, there was a nice strong break there. So what we're going to be doing now is basically, I think that we could be looking at a retest now structure. So maybe something like this that we could see, and then look at those continuations to potentially go lower. So NFP is out of the way, and possibly this could happen. I'm just going to be curious on that high here, so 1830. But yeah, just curious to see what can happen from this this pair. This could also still kind of drop, and then possibly push up higher and then drop afterwards. So that's very confusing, but that's something that the ultimate bias is pretty much to take out this low here, so around 1750, possibly head into 1700. So that's what we spoke about last week. But yeah, we'll see what we can come for through with gold this week. So moving on to Euro USD. So what I was looking at throughout this whole week is just this huge build up of price. There's clearly going to be at least some moderately big breakout to a certain degree, so hoping that we can get involved with this trade. But essentially this midline right now is quite crucial. There's pretty much two scenarios that I'm looking at right now, so let me just go ahead and just get rid of these drawings. So essentially, we have the obvious that this is going to possibly continue to break lower, and then the other one is where price is possibly going to make a new high and then follow on that continuation lower. So they're the only two kind of outlooks that I've got for this week for EU. There's nothing too much about this, but I am looking for more sell biases to the downside, so I'm expecting some moderate pushes to the downside, but we'll see what can come from this pair for this week. So moving on to NZD USD. So there is a possibility that we're still waiting for price to make this move up. So I am going to get rid of this, but essentially the bias for this is that price could make a continuation up higher just to test into this downtrend. So hoping to look at some pullbacks. The alternative here is for a sell-off condition, and that's if price breaks all of these lows at 0.67, and then we could possibly take a look at taking some retest sells. So ideally this is this sell position will have to wait to see if this can hold, but if this can if we hold this low, there is a possibility that price can rally to the upside, clearing all of this zone here, hedging into 0.69. So that could be a good couple of pips there. So I don't really want to look at any other positions here, just looking at a buy and then a potential sell. Okay, so looking at AUD. So here we can see that price is pretty much looking to break to the downside. So ideally what I've been looking at is just to see if price is going to kind of hold up with this. So my kind of outlook for this for now, let me just go get rid of all this because I think it has definitely changed just slightly. I'm looking for price to pretty much potentially make a new high. So it could go something like this eventually and then break to the downside, where it will break low. So that's pretty much the kind of general bias. We're aiming to take out these highs. So whether there's multiple manipulations along the way, that's totally up to the market to decide. But I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those trend lines just for now, just because it makes it a little bit easier. But I'm still kind of looking for price to possibly make its way to the upside and then finally push back to the downside. So again, you could look at some buy positions, or maybe some intermediate sell-off positions. You don't have to wait for price to get up to the high. It could turn over to the downside earlier. Again, it really you have to respond to what the market is kind of telling you. Okay, so taking a look at UJ. So essentially what I've got for this, I've pretty much got rid of this bias where we could get that turnover. I was looking at this zone as a level of respect, but we've clearly broken up from it now, and as the second scenario suggests, that we wait for that retest. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. So possibly waiting for price to do something like this. You know, hopefully we can look at a buying opportunity. Maybe that could hopefully lead to more pushes towards the upside. I'm going to be looking into 117 next as my next kind of level of potential resistance or kind of value. I don't really want to look at anything else just yet, but that's what I'm looking into now. So looking at CADJPY, if we look into this, we're looking at price to make the other side on potentially making one more push up higher. I was looking at price to do some sort of dip here from last week, maybe a bit stronger lower, but obviously we didn't get that. Trying to see if, you know, there's a possibility of price now going up to the upside. So if we break this high at 92, what I'm going to be looking at is to see if we find that rejection drop lower, or if we're going to find those continuations up to the upside. So we are pretty much, you know, I would argue that we've missed out this kind of entry from obviously from the bottoms. So we just have to kind of like let this price action settle, and then hopefully we'll get a deciding factor for this pair. But I think most likely we could be looking at an upside. But if we find that rejection, there's a possibility that we can just drop off. So that's with that. Let's take a look at EJ. So for this, ideally, I'm looking for price to pretty much do the same thing. I was looking for a bit more of a drop lower, so we could still look out for that. But if we start to get a break towards the upside, we could potentially look at a failure to the downside, and that's where we could possibly look at price doing. So one of the two things really, we have to wait for that high to be broken. So 132 could be a nice level that we could watch and see what can respond to this. If we start to see some rejections, then definitely we could be looking at some sells, but I'm just going to key up for that and just get ready for that pair. Taking a look at AJ. You know, this one's actually quite messy, to be honest, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these drawings. But I think ultimately we're going to be watching this uptrend as we spoke from last week. Possibly we could experience a fake out, so this is probably the main thing that we're going to be looking out for, and hedging itself up to the upside. I think that's pretty much what I've got in terms of this potential. I think this trend line can act as a nice point where we could get a fake out. So let's just see what can happen after that. USDCHF. Again, I'm realizing I'm going through this quite quickly, but I think you know, there's not really much to talk about, I guess, this week. So one possibility that I'm looking at here is, let me just get rid of these drawings. So just touching on from last week, you know, we expected a bounce. You know, this was quite useful, but we saw price continuate to the upside. So I think we can go ahead and get rid of this, because there's a possibility that price may want to reverse to the downside and clean out this low. And I think that ultimately my bias has changed a bit more slightly, just because of how price is kind of responding to, you know, we've not really pushed off of this really cleanly. I was, you know, if this was to respect properly, we should have rocketed off by now. So there's a slight feeling that we could be dropping off a lot lower. So hopefully we can look at some sells. Again, you know, we have to wait for price to obviously, you know, come up to here, but so we could possibly look at some buys. But again, that's obviously counter trend. Again, I'll be looking to mainly take some sells and hold them ideally. I'm finally looking at USDCAD. So yeah, we're coming to a very important level. I really want to get rid of this level right now because I think prospectively we could be still pushing up higher. Again, it probably would make sense for price to come into this zone, potentially tap 1.26 and then go a lot higher. Or we could probably look at a scenario where price drops just a bit lower, look at how price responds to this and then see if it can continue to rally up higher. So I'm going to move this trend line to here. Probably doesn't really make any much of a difference, but again, this is just a higher time frame perspective of a fake out, so we could expect something like this where price rallies up to the upside, convincing a lot of people that we're selling off now. So I'll be interested to see if how price plays out from this point. Keeping my eyes peeled on this one, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that will be all for this week. Again, really rapidly gone through this week's analysis. Has been later than usual, but just been going over some of the charts and clearing up some stuff. So hopefully it will next week we'll be back on time. But yeah, above all, if you did get any value from this video, feel free to leave a like, leave some comments, and subscribe to the channel. So that'll be all from us. Thank you very much for listening, guys. See you all in our next week's video.